congratulations on your 25th album. Is it called Review or
It is. It's called Review. It
Review?
is the word is intentionally broken up
Okay.
because it's really about seeing songs that I've sung for so long in a new light. So it's the re-seeing it
Mm.
and reinterpreting them through life, through life informing me and hearing some harmonic tweaks and stuff. So yeah.
Yes. Okay. So I wanted to ask, first of all, I wanted to ask you about your how you got into it. But before that, what was your experience like working on this project with so many legends like Dolly Parton and Kenny Loggins and also
Yeah.
Gerald Albright? Just so
Gerald, all
many.
absolutely, yeah. Um, I had started recording much of this before the pandemic. So I had quite a bit of it in the can, and my intention was to release it a few years ago, and then of course everything shut down.
Mhm.
And my manager said, your 50th year of this career is showing up, so why don't you use this as a vehicle to help celebrate it,
Okay.
which was perfectly synchronistic. And it gave me a chance to reach out to some of these great and beloved colleagues that I've known for such a long time. Gerald is just, as good as
Mhm.
it gets.
Yeah.
And Dave Koz is,
Oh,
could eat him
Dave
with a
Koz too?
spoon.
Oh,
Yes, Dave Koz is playing on Whenever I Call You Friend with Kenny Loggins and Dolly Parton. Yeah, so I mean, I never had those people in mind because
mhm.
I was just putting one foot in front of another, creating the tracks for the songs. But then when they were done, all of the elements showed up. In the song that Gerald played on called Just You and I, it was written a very long time ago by Carol Sager and myself. And when we wrote it in the early 70s, the women's movement was just beginning. And that's what we wrote it about. We wrote it about solidarity and allegiance and alliance. And, you know, fast forward, and here we are in the middle of the pandemic. And I realized because I took the time to create a video to go with each song.
Uh-huh.
And for Just You and I, the video paid homage to those who had been marginalized and were suddenly called
Mhm.
essential workers,
Mhm.
nurses and delivery people and postal people and pizza delivery people. And, and so, so to show that being underscored with the song Just You and I was very meaningful. And since I am artist in residence at a little community college near here in Glendora, California,
Okay.
called Citrus College, their music department is just spectacular. So I composed choral parts for their young singers,
Mhm.
and I used some of their musicians, and they get credit. And then I reached out to Gerald Albright, and I said, "Play the highest note you can think of." And I mean, he played a fantastic
Uh-huh.
solo, but at the end, I really wanted that clarion call,
Uh-huh.
that call to arms. And he was here. Yeah.
Years. What do you attest to your longevity in the music industry? What do you say? Think.
I refused to leave. And I really understood in looking back, not in moving forward so much, but in looking back, I realized that mostly artists live in chapters.
Mhm.
And to keep rediscovering anew what the next chapter may be for you.
Mhm.
And the chapters show up for different reasons. Sometimes a record company wants you to try a new style of music. For me, in the 80s, it was the disco world was
Okay.
new. So they wanted to see if I could comfortably fit into that lane, which was unusual because I'm mostly a balladeer. But because of that, and because of the song "You Should Hear How She Talks About You," I won a Grammy. So so you're off and running in that on that chapter for a while,
Mhm.
and then you record something like "Through the Eyes of Love"
Yes.
for the film Ice Castles, and the
That's
thing
it.
is the longevity part that is so deeply touching is what your songs mean to people.
Mhm.
Through the Eyes of Love was the first dance at so many people's weddings.
Yes.
And,
I can
you
only imagine.
know, Midnight Blue was a song that got people through a lot of hard times in their teens, so I'm told. And a lot of my songs have been of that service, and that is so unexpected. That's the unexpected gift, because when you're writing, you're just facing a blank piece of paper. So to have that come back to you from the listeners,
Mhm,
it's really
mhm.
gratifying. It's a very pale word to use. It is deeply touching.
Yeah, and I love your voice. And I was just listening to
Thank
it.
you.
You have a beautiful voice. So
Thank you.
yeah. So growing up, who was that person that kind of pushed you into the music area, or was it something that you always just wanted to do? How did that start?
I was raised in a very musical family. My father was a bassoonist with the Metropolitan Opera Orchestra, and my mother was a pioneer in the fashion industry. She was one of the first women to own her own design and manufacturing firm. And so my sister and we were raised in the Bronx of Manhattan, which was very adventurous and very full of music and art. And since my parents were the black sheep of their family, they sort of blessed my sister and I and said, "Good luck." And I heard when I was 5 years old, my dad brought home the LP of Ella Sings Gershwin, Ella Fitzgerald, and it was just she and Ellis Larkins on piano. And at 5 years old, I had no idea what she was singing about, but the tone of her voice,
Mhm.
I was off. I was just off. I wanted to follow her to her world.
Mhm.
And I was blessed because I got a chance to meet her and spend some time with her later. But that's where I started to get informed. And of course, we had lots of classical music around the house because my dad
Mhm.
was always practicing his parts for the opera, and there was some jazz. There
Mhm.
wasn't too much rock and roll, but in those days, AM popular song radio was filled with hits that were still coming off of the stages of Broadway.
Okay.
And so the quality of the American popular song was, in the mid 50s was still pretty solid. And
Mhm.
then my listening started to expand, and I was listening to Motown, and I was listening to the Philadelphia sound, and then when the Beatles showed up, and that was sort of the defining change on radio, because
Mhm.
what constituted an American popular song started to change. The Beatles, then Sly and the Family Stone, and Stevie Wonder, and you know, Carole King and Bonnie Raitt and James Taylor. And Joni Mitchell. And my particular muse was a woman by the name of Laura Nyro.
Okay.
And and then I got the opportunity to study songwriting with Paul Simon when I was about 17. And
Oh my goodness, really?
yeah, it was amazing. It was really amazing. Saw her down in Greenwich Village when she was 18 or 19 years old. I remember my mother coming home. I think she was opening for Benny Goodman.
Mhm.
And my mother came home, and I was getting ready to go to school, and she said, "I heard a young woman sing last night. Her name is Barbara Streisand, and her voice is sublime." She said, "But she wears nightgowns on stage." Because she did. She was poor, and she went to thrift shops and she wore nightgowns. She would buy vintage nightgowns, beautiful silk nightgowns, for a buck, and that's what she wore. Yeah, and then many years later, I was blessed to have co-written a song with Tom Snow that she sang at her wedding to James Brolin, and then she recorded it on her album A Love Like Ours, called Just One Lifetime. Too Many People, yeah. Just Too Many People was written many years ago by me and Vinnie Poncia,
Mhm.
and it was released, I think, after Midnight Blue, which was my first hit. And there were certain radio stations that would not play Just Too Many People because they somehow thought there was some kind of code messaging about it being anti-family, which is completely nonsense. Um, but I just thought that in re-recording it now,
Mhm.
it's interesting because what happened on Review is several of these songs from so long ago grew into the moment we are in. And I did not see that coming. And Just Too Many People, for me, it showed up anew
Mhm.
to be the commentary on where we are today. There's this epidemic of loneliness that we are suffering from, while we are interconnected on social media. How do those two things line up? Well, it's interesting because the interconnectedness on social media doesn't mean anything compared to human interaction, which will always be an enduring solution. So
Mhm,
for just too many people and the video that goes with it, because all of these songs had videos,
mhm,
I just thought it would be an interesting way to underscore that sense of isolation and try to present it as a prayer
mhm.
to look to the left and look to the right and see people who are just like you in need of connection. The thing about all of these songs that I did, because it is just the reality of being on stage, all
Mhm.
songs come to an end. So none of these tracks fade. They all come to an end. So if
Okay.
you're standing in the middle of your kitchen drying the dishes and you feel like applauding, have at it.
Okay, yeah. So right now you are on tour? I mean, I thought
I
you.
am. Yes, I'm in the musical Funny Girl. It's the first national tour in 60 years. I am
Cool.
playing Fanny Bryce's mother,
Mhm.
Mrs. Bryce, and it's a company of 30 fantastic dancers and singers. And the pit is full of lots of musicians. So it's a
Mhm.
very glorious evening in the theater.
What would you say? What's your stick to itiveness? What would you say to someone else who's like, I don't know if I want to continue to do it, or I don't think I have it. So can you just
Well,
some words of wisdom or something?
yeah, well, if there is any doubt about the artist's walk,
Hmm.
really don't do it, because the artist's walk is unsteady, emotionally unsafe at times, unsane sometimes. So you really have to dig deep to have your reserve of spiritual groundedness. You have to know what anchors you. And through trial and error, you have to know the people that help anchor you. Because when you are starting in this and things are coming at you, so are people who want to get close to you. And you have to really know, the thing is that you don't start off with a muscle of discernment. You only gain that muscle of discernment and wisdom as you live. You make mistakes, you befriend the wrong person, you sign a terrible contract because you want it so badly. So so for people who aren't sure about what they, if they want this, really examine that and any other possibility. Any job with a pension is a good idea.
I understand
But
that.
yeah, but on the other hand, when I teach young people, young singer-songwriters, and I see their hunger, I remember my hunger. My hunger has never left, because my hunger is my spirit. And
Mhm.
my spirit has no idea what 50 years of doing this means.
Right.
Spirit
Yes.
has no way, it's just let's play.
Uh-huh.
And you know what I'm saying? And
I
so
understand that. Yeah.
yes, exactly. And so um, this is a very rigorous walk, very rigorous, but I've been blessed to raise two wonderful children. I'm a grandma now, and I have a wonderful circle of family, extended family. So you build. The thing about an artist is, and I'm blessed because I have made a living from living my life. I mean,
Yeah.
that's effectively what it is. Thank you
Thank,
very much.
thank you so much. And I'm gonna share your album with everyone and tell them to go out and purchase it. Um,
Yes.
I'm just excited so much for you speaking with me today. You made my day. So
Thank you so much. I really appreciate you seeing me, and this
yes.
was a lovely visit. I appreciate it.